and pleasing in thy sight, O God. Amen. By this they will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Tonight is Maundy Thursday in Holy Week, and Maundy comes from the Greek word mondos, which means commandment. And this is to commemorate the night where Jesus gave us the great commandment to love one another. And he also instituted the Eucharist tonight, the Lord's Supper, which we will partake of on Sunday, Easter Sunday. But in the meantime, tonight we celebrate when Jesus told us that people would know that we are his disciples if we love one another. And you know, this building is incredibly beautiful. This church is pretty amazing. But if we're not a people who love one another, then really we're just a people who appreciates interesting architecture, right? We're not the gathered people of God if we don't have love for one another. And that love isn't always easy. In today's text, Jesus says, love one another, and then washes their feet, puts on the clothing of a servant and washes all of their feet. He's kind of saying, love one another like this. And he does this, and we normally commemorate this where tonight we would wash one another's feet, but because of COVID, it's not an option. But I also know years of being a priest that people kind of don't like the foot washing thing. People think it's awkward. People are like, oh, it's just intimate and weird, and I don't like people touching my feet, and I kind of like it. I like that it's a little awkward because it's love. It's loving one another, and at times that's awkward. At times that's difficult. At times you have to get into people's spaces, and it doesn't feel great, and it's not always comfortable loving one another. And I think this beauty of washing one another's feet is a great example. And so tonight we're not going to wash one another's feet, but after the sermon, when we normally would do the foot washing, we're going to watch a quick 3-minute video of Pope Francis washing the feet of prisoners. It was a couple years back. And what's fascinating is this foot washing is an example of being a servant and loving, especially loving the lowly. Because what's great about this passage from John that Deacon Frank read is that Jesus knows Judas is going to betray him. And Judas is one of the disciples there. And Jesus washes Judas's feet. He says, even you, Judas, who's going to betray me, I am going to show you love. And I'm going to wash your feet. And so Pope Francis, in an imitation of Jesus, goes to a prison and washes the feet of prisoners. And this was pretty controversial for some Catholics because the tradition had become that if you were a really big deal in the Catholic Church, if you were a lay person that had gotten up here, then you were maybe given the honor of having the Pope wash your feet on Maundy Thursday. So perhaps if you gave a lot of money to the church, or if you were kind of running in the bigwig bishop, archbishop circles, you were given the honor of going there. Which shows how even this act that Jesus said is love one another by serving, we humans are still able to take that act and warp it into being manipulated by our own power dynamics and our own need to feel important and powerful. And so when the Pope washed the feet of prisoners, it was controversial. And I think it's funny how whenever Pope Francis behaves like Jesus, it's pretty controversial. But I also love it, and I admire a lot of what he does. And Maundy Thursday, after that, towards the end of the service technically doesn't end tonight. It melds into tomorrow night's service. They're technically one service. And so there's no dismissal. There's no final hymn at the end of the service. And tomorrow there's no processional coming in. There's no opening to the service. It just kind of begins. And part of that is because we do the stripping of the altar at the end of the service. And tonight we're going to show a video of another little YouTube video of a couple minutes of a church stripping away all of the stuff, just because there's not a lot for me to strip away tonight. And while that video plays, I'll strip all the stuff away. But tonight's service is one of my favorite that we do all year. And it's because the first time I went to a Maundy Thursday service, my friend just invited me. He didn't tell me anything about it. I didn't know anything that was going to happen. And at the end of the service, as they were stripping away the altar, the candles, all the banners, all the altar hangings, all the stuff around the church, they just took it all away slowly. And as they were doing it, they started shutting the lights off in the sanctuary, starting in the back. And it said in the bulletin, we're going to end the service in silence and you leave whenever you want. And we'll do that tonight. I'll leave the feed on and we'll all just be muted and you can contemplate and pray however long you want. But that first time I went, as they were doing it, I just started to cry. And I'm not a big crier, but I just started to cry because it hit me in like a bold way that this is what happened to Jesus, and all the disciples whose feet he had just washed had abandoned him. And they arrested Jesus, they stripped him away, and not only did they take away his clothing, but it was like his support group, his disciples, the people he loved the most, had all left him. And I wonder if Jesus, right before that happens, knows that's going to happen, and he tells them, you have to love one another. And one thing I'm thinking about this week is maybe they needed that commandment at that moment, because after they abandoned Jesus and he gets executed, they needed to learn how to forgive themselves for abandoning Jesus. And one way that I've found that I'm able to forgive myself for my mistakes is when I'm in a community that loves me. I experienced this a year ago yesterday, was when my spouse left. I'm divorced now and all that stuff, and my spouse left. And I remember watching her drive away at the beginning of this pandemic, and I went up into my bedroom at the back of my apartment, and I collapsed on my bed, and I was sobbing. And I remember, this is kind of actually funny. In the moment, it seemed funny too, but I heard the neighbor behind me, I heard his dog start to howl. And I realized I was sobbing so loudly that the dog was howling, which is maybe sad. I think it's funny. But anyway, in the midst of that despair and heartbreak, I was like, I need my friends. I need people who love me. I need this love. And so the next day, I was way too early. I was not emotionally ready to tell people I was getting divorced, but I did it anyway because I needed friends. So I ended up calling 7 friends, telling them I was getting divorced. And they said, oh man, I'm so sorry. What can I do for you? And I said, great question. I need each of you to pick a day of the week, and I need you to call me every week on that day. And that's why I picked 7 friends. And every day, and it's been going on for a year, I have a conversation with at least one old friend. And at first they were there to support me because I was heartbroken and I was a wreck. But then as the months went on, sometimes they were going through really difficult things and I was able to be there for them. And I feel like I just really learned, and I'm still having these conversations. Recently I was telling them, I said, I'm feeling pretty good. I think I'm kind of getting over this. But I still love chatting. Let's keep talking at least every week. And they said, that's great. I look forward to it every week. This is one of my highlights and I love it. And I think I was able to heal and get out of that heartbroken spot because I was in a community that loves me and I was able to love them. But I also was able to see myself as worthy of love and of grace and of forgiveness. And I wonder if that's what Jesus was doing with these disciples. You're all going to abandon me. You're going to feel terrible about it, but you need to love one another because you need to be able to forgive yourself. And you need to see yourself as worthy of forgiveness. And you need to see yourself as worthy of love. And when those happen, we are more equipped to then love even more people. And so as we get to this end of the season of Lent, where ideally we've been looking inside and exploring ways in which we have failed, ways in which we've been wayward, I hope tonight that we don't just sit in that place of pity and beating our chest over our failures and our waywardness. But I hope tonight we also see that, yes, we are all wayward, and in the midst of that waywardness, that despair, and that heartbreak, we also have to know that we are loved. You are loved. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of forgiveness, and you are worthy of loving yourself. Amen.